At 15 years old, I traveled to Thailand on a family vacation with my mom and sister. We stayed in a fancy hotel in the center of Bangkok, which had a rooftop swimming pool. The hotel was deserted at the time, with the pool completely empty, so I decided to swim, alone, while my family stayed in the hotel room. I did about 10 laps of the pool before a suspicious-looking man appeared on the roof. He wore a thick garment and had a weathered face partially hidden by a baseball cap. The man lingered for a while before he started asking me questions. The questions were innocent at first, like, "How are you enjoying Thailand?" and "What's your favorite food?" But soon they became much more personal. "How many people are in your room?" "How many men?" "How much money do you have?" Feeling uneasy, I jumped out of the pool, threw a towel on, and walked away. The man followed, but I managed to make it to an elevator just as the doors closed. Relieved I had escaped the act situation, I traveled down 6 stories to our room's floor. When I got out of the elevator, the man was standing right outside my room. I started to panic, but I needed to return to my family, so I headed towards the door. As I did, the man kept shouting, "How many men?" in an increasingly irate tone. I lied and said there were lots of men and I was traveling with a large group. In reality, it was just my sister, mother, and me. I quickly opened and slammed the door behind me. I locked the deadbolt and the 2 remaining door locks. I was glad to see my family as I entered. I told them of the events that had just happened, and they laughed it off, indifferent to the matter. I was distressed and reiterated we were in danger, but my warnings yielded little action. After about 5 minutes had passed, my unease slowly subsided and I got ready for the day ahead. As I did, I noticed a smell drift through the room and a thick cloud of smoke soon appeared above my head. The smoke originated from the air vents. Thoughts raced through my mind. Had the man started a fire? Did he want us to leave our room? Was it a trap? Was he waiting outside? I shouted to my family, and this time my warnings were taken seriously. We met at the door and raced outside. The man was nowhere to be seen. Worried the man was expecting us at the elevator, my sister suggested we take the fire escape stairs. We raced down 20 flights of stairs to the bottom. Along the way, there was no sign of the man. We entered the reception and described the situation with the smoke and the man. The receptionist seemed indifferent to the matter and sent security to take a look. We waited in the lobby for a while before we were told the thermostat malfunctioned and we were unable to stay in our room. We were offered another room, however, we decided not to stay and stayed elsewhere that evening. The man was never heard from again. Note: went for a swim in a Bangkok hotel. A strange man appeared and asked personal questions while swimmin' followed me to my room and checked the number of guests in the room. Soon after, the room filled with smoke due to a malfunction, and the man wasn't seen again. So mine takes place in a London hostel a few weeks ago. I have 2 friends with me, both male, and we're staying in a 9-bed mixed dorm. There are 3 sets of 3-tier bunk beds. I'm in the bottom bed of the right bunk. Friend 1 is on the top of my bunk. Friend 2 is in the bottom bed of the middle bunk. We get in at 2 a.m. and all quietly get into our beds. After a few minutes of lying there trying to sleep, I hear rustling behind me. I'm lying on my side facing the wall. I think it's just someone going through their bag, so I ignore it. Then I feel a hand on my hip over the cover. I turn around, and it's a random guy telling me to move over and trying to pull at my cover. I initially thought he was drunk and wasn't sure which bed to be in, so I tell him to go find his own bed, and then he shuffles away to the bottom bed of the left bunk. He comes back again. I again tell him to go back to his own bed, and he shuffles back again. This happens a couple more times, and I gradually speak louder, getting less polite and telling him to leave. I'm shaking because the situation is making me nervous, and I message my mate, who's on the top bunk, saying I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep that night. He messages back casually, thinking it's because of someone snoring. This is when I find out both my mates have earplugs in, and although they've heard me speaking, they each thought I was speaking to the other friend. So I tell him the situation, and he starts keeping an eye out. I hear the guy go to the ensuite bathroom, but I can tell from the light he left the bathroom door open while using it and refused to look. My mate fills me in that the guy was walking around with his pants down and deliberately left the door open to get me to look. But either way, the guy goes back to his bed and we think the situation is finally over. Then it happens again. My mate, keeping an eye out, shines his phone light on the floor and shouts for the guy to leave. Apparently, he was crawling across the floor again towards me. The guy suddenly takes offense at my mate's light shining on him and starts climbing the bunk ladder like King Kong to get to my mate on the top bunk and was trying to take his phone. They wrestle for a while, with my mate actually kicking the guy in the neck to try to keep him away, only for the guy to swing backwards and come straight back at him again. I use this time to run for security, who find the guy still hanging on the bed when they arrive, then call the police and have the guy taken away in a riot van and banned from the building. While the police had dragged him outside waiting for the riot van, the guy head-butted the brick wall several times. I have no idea what that guy was on because it wasn't alcohol, but it's clear he was under something to take a kick to the neck and still act like nothing happened. Afterward, the guy kept trying to blame my mate when security came as well, saying things in broken English like, "Come up here and see how violent this guy is." My other mate, who had slept through the whole incident, kept saying the next day that he couldn't believe how friendly everyone in London is. Note, please don't let this put you off hostels. I've traveled alone in Europe and never had any problems before. Usually hostels are a great way to meet people or find activities to do in the local area. I travel a lot and have gone to plenty of third world countries, etc. But my worst hotel story by far came in Sullivan County, NY, less than 2 months ago. We were hit by 2 storms that decimated the area and knocked out power for 10 days. I was there doing emergency work, and the entire area was a mess. Like, they put me up in a hotel. I'm like, sure, whatever, but I don't really check it out because our logistics person handles it, and I'm swamped with 18-hour days. So I arrive at this hotel around 1 a.m., exhausted, and I find it's locked. There is a handwritten note in crayon on the door that says, "Not here, call X." I notice at this time that the hotel is legitimately crawling with meth and or crackheads. Not just odd people, but people screaming, running through the halls, slamming doors, crying, etc. Finally, the man comes and lets me in. The place smells like a sour mix of waste, death, and mothballs. I don't have a need for luxury, but this is a bit much. I get to my room and have to walk through dingy, filthy halls. It was a motel, so my room was exposed to the outside with a small walkway. I arrive and immediately see a huge, brownish stain on the floor, which I can only guess was old blood. The lampshade is riddled with cigarette burns, and the room itself is filthy. Someone obliterated the bathroom in what I can only assume was a meth-fueled Jackson Pollock imitation. I'm so tired and have to be back at work in about 4 hours that I try to just sleep, in my clothes, with my boots still on. The door wouldn't close properly, so the wind whipped through a large crack, and the heat didn't work. I wrapped myself in the duvet like a human taco to no avail. About an hour in, people started scampering around outside, screaming and yelling. I got up and jammed a chair under the door handle because, of course, the door didn't lock. I seriously considered sleeping in my car, but it was cold and I felt like I had a better chance of being murdered in a parking lot than in that room. Some person crashed into my little bay window shortly after, and I sat straight up, grabbed my Leatherman, and prepared myself for having to defend myself that night. When I got back to my station in the morning and told the guys where I stayed, they didn't even believe me. 2 of the cops there said they investigated homicides there. 2 separate cases. The Red Cross representative said they used to send their homeless population there, but they don't anymore because it's too dangerous. It's a big running joke now, but at the time it really sucked and was the only time in my life I was genuinely worried about where I had slept. I traveled to Liverpool a few years ago with an ex-girlfriend. We stayed in the Adelphi Hotel for 2 nights. I found it on a booking site for a cheap rate, and I'm a huge history buff, so it seemed perfect. For those unfamiliar with the building, it has been in continuous use since the 19th century. It has old-fashioned rooms with high ceilings and Victorian furnishings. I thought it would be great, though our room felt a bit creepy. There was a large mirror right across from the bed. There was nothing out of the ordinary, so we went out to explore the town. When we came back at night, we were too tired to shower as we normally do. We fell into bed. Before I begin the actual creepy part, the room was an ensuite with a tiny foyer between the bedroom and the bathroom, where the front door to the hotel room was located, along with a storage closet. I always like to lock things before I go to sleep. It's a habit of mine. So I locked both the front door and the chain lock on the door leading to the bedroom. So far, everything was normal, and we drifted off to sleep, or so I thought. Less than 15 minutes after I'd closed my eyes, but not yet fallen asleep, I experienced the most intense terror of my life. I'm not talking about normal fear. It felt like the moment I realized someone was watching me and didn't want me to know it. There was a sense of dread in the air, as if something wasn't right. I jumped out of bed and turned the light on. Nothing. But the door was wide open. I woke up my ex and asked her if she had gotten up to use the toilet since we had gone to bed. She said no, so I asked her again with more intensity. No, she was certain that neither of us had gotten up in the 15 minutes since we had turned off the lights. I asked if she felt anything. She said no, just very tired, and she wanted to sleep. However, I was too terrified to fall asleep, so I turned on all the lights in the room and locked the door again, trying everything to take my mind off of what seemed to be an empty room. I glanced nervously up from my laptop now and then to see if anything was there. Hours later, I was too tired to stay up anymore, and I fell asleep without realizing. But when I woke in the morning, the door was once again open. My ex denied either of us using the toilet during the night. The same sequence of events repeated the next night as well. After the first night, I began to suspect something was not normal. However, I refrained from Googling Adelphi Hotel and haunted until I was on the train out of the city. Apparently, the Adelphi is the most haunted hotel in Britain. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I was really frightened that night. I will never forget it. Even now, I'm at home in my well-lit flat in the middle of the day, and I'm getting scared writing this. I traveled to Liverpool a few years ago with an ex-girlfriend. We stayed in the Adelphi Hotel for 2 nights. I found it on a booking site for a cheap rate, and I'm a huge history buff, so it seemed perfect. For those unfamiliar with the building, it has been in continuous use since the 19th century. It has old-fashioned rooms with high ceilings and generally Victorian furnishings. I thought it would be great. Though our room felt a bit creepy, there was a massive mirror right across from the bed. There was nothing out of the ordinary, so we went out to explore the town. When we came back at night, we were too tired to shower as we normally do. We fell into bed. Before I begin the actual creepy part, the room was an ensuite with a tiny foyer between the bedroom and the bathroom, where the front door to the hotel room was located, along with a storage closet. I always like to lock things before I go to sleep. It's a habit of mine. So I locked both the front door and the chain lock on the door leading to the bedroom. So far, everything was normal, and we drifted off to sleep. Or so I thought. Less than 15 minutes after I had closed my eyes but not yet fallen asleep, I experienced the most intense terror of my life. I'm not talking about normal fear. It felt like the moment I realized someone was watching me and didn't want me to know it. There was a sense of dread in the air, as if something wasn't right. I jumped out of bed and turned the light on. Nothing. But the door was wide open. I woke up my ex and asked her if she had gotten up to use the toilet since we had gone to bed. She said no, so I asked her again with more intensity. No, she was certain that neither of us had gotten up in the 15 minutes since we had turned off the lights. I told her okay and asked her if she felt anything. She said no, just very tired and she wanted to sleep. However, I was too terrified to fall asleep. So I turned on all the lights in the room and locked the door again, trying everything to take my mind off of what seemed to be an empty room. I glanced nervously up from my laptop now and then to see if anything was there. Hours later, I was too tired to stay up anymore, and I fell asleep without realizing. But when I woke in the morning, the door was once again open. My ex denied either of us using the toilet during the night. The same sequence of events repeated the next night as well. After the first night, I began to suspect something was not normal. However, I refrained from Googling Adelphi Hotel and haunted until I was on the train out of the city. Apparently, the Adelphi is the most haunted hotel in Britain. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I was really frightened that night. I will never forget it. Even now, I'm sat at home in my well-lit flat in the middle of the day, and I'm getting scared writing this. I was in Madagascar for a study abroad, and a stomach illness was eating its way through the group. It would seemingly bounce from person to person, so somebody would be sick every day or two. We were traveling to our 4th hotel when it was my turn to be sick. The group dropped me off and got me settled in my room before they continued their day of activities. The hotel we pulled up to was straight out of that Keenan and Kel Halloween special. Suits of armor in the foyer, poorly lit, and a very creepy old owner who looked like he died years ago. We were the only people staying at the hotel, so it was eerily quiet. There was also a cat that lived in the hotel and was howling for what felt like hours. The stairs to our rooms were magnificently large and ornate, and the hallways were pitch black. They were motion activated, but on a large delay. So you'd walk into the hallway and they'd flicker after you'd already walked past them. I got to my room and all I could think about was the sloshing in my stomach. My stomach contents were basically liquefied, and I had fluids shooting out of both ends. I literally crawled into bed and fell asleep for hours. I was awoken halfway through my sleep to the sounds of my doorknob jingling for about 3 minutes before the door very slowly opened. I could see out into the hallway, but it was pitch black. The lights weren't activated. I said, "Hello?" And there was no response. I was in no condition to get up, so I just waited. And after about 20 seconds, the door slammed shut with a loud bang. I badly had to go to the bathroom again, but I was all too afraid to crawl my way back to it. As I finally mustered the courage to relieve myself, I heard the water in the sink begin to run as if somebody was in there washing their hands. That's when I realized the door was open to the bathroom. I closed it because it smelled of vomit. I could feel the hairs on my arms stand, and I wasn't sure what to do. I threw the covers over my head and just tried to go back to sleep. I woke again after a couple more hours, and my group returned to the hotel maybe an hour before I woke up. I walked down to dinner, and everybody was sitting around this dusty large table, staring at me like I was a ghost. They asked me if I was the one opening and closing their doors, or if I was the one knocking on doors and running away before they opened them. One girl said she heard a voice whispering through her window, but we were up maybe 3 or 4 floors. During the night, I was knocked out cold and didn't experience anything else. But everybody in my group had to deal with constant door harassment, and more of them heard whispers. The cat also began to howl at about 11 p.m. and didn't stop until 1 a.m. My father went with a group to Tanzania to do some medical work in a poorer village. For a few nights of the trip, the group stayed in a hotel. My dad was sharing a room with another man from the group, separate beds. One night, he is woken up by his roommate who has the light on. He looks terrified, trembling and praying. My dad asks what's wrong, but he won't say anything about it. My dad is obviously concerned, but since he can't do anything about it, he goes back to sleep. The next night, in the middle of the night, my father gets up to pee. He walks to the bathroom and starts to relieve himself when he catches a very strong scent of body odor. He and most of the people from the group are daily deodorant wearers, being from the U.S. Many locals in Tanzania don't wear it as frequently, so when the smell hits his nose, he realizes he and his roommate might not be alone. He turns around and sees, standing there in the doorway, a local woman, shaking violently, her eyes rolled up, locked on the ceiling. He panics, as no one should have been able to get into the room. He turns back toward the bathroom in a moment of confusion, but when he turns back, she's just gone, as if she had never been there. Shaken, he goes back to bed thinking maybe he was dreaming or seeing things. He lies back down on his side, and adrenaline starting to wear off, he begins to doze off again. Suddenly the smell returns. He slowly rolls over and looks to his left. There, in the bed beside him, is the woman laying flat on her back, eyes glued to the ceiling. Again panicking, he breaks his line of sight to her, and again she is gone. My dad wasn't able to get back to sleep. The woman never made another appearance. He asked his roommate about it the next morning, and he had encountered the same thing the night before, which was why he was so shaken. It could be explained by the fact that they were both on anti-malarial drugs, which can have side effects that include strange dreams, but still super creepy. And definitely weird that even if it was caused by the medication, both my father and his roommate experienced the same thing.